Hi, everyone. All right, it is 12 o'clock and we have a lot of content and discussions to have here today. So I'm going to go ahead and kick us off and get us started here. So thank you all again for joining. This is our first 60 by 25 network fully virtual conference. And excited here that we were able to make this shift and still be able to gather communities together to discuss all the important topics and sessions that we have. Today, what we're going to be talking about are dual credit policy recommendations and developing effective dual credit partnerships. So if you attended the plenary this morning, you heard our different state agency partners talking about dual credit, things like model programs of study, Dual Credit Quality Act. We'll talk too about our model partnership agreement. We have a lot of things to cover here today, and we have three different presenters from three different spaces who will share their dual credit insights, learnings, recommendations with you all here today. So the plan for our discussion today on dual credit is to really kind of start first with some current policy landscape and recommendations. We have Sarah joining us from ILSEP, who will talk about some different reports that have come out. Also, we're going to talk about legislative updates and community implementation. Aimee from Stanford Children has some different pieces about some reports that they've done, some legislative updates, and also some community models of how dual credit plays out in their communities. And then finally, we'll take some time to really dive into the model partnership agreement. We'll explain this a bit more as we get to that section, but it really is a recommended practice, a model for dual credit partnerships that communities can implement pieces of or wholly, depending on their needs. And we'll have Rodrigo from Elgin Community College talking us through that here. But would like to point out here that this really is a shared learning experience. We have a lot of information and models and resources to share with you all, but really encourage you to use the chat heavily, share your insights, your resources, your questions. We really love to hear what you all are up to in dual credit, what questions you have to kind of guide this conversation and dig in more deeply on items as we need to. And we'd love on that point to know who's here today. So if in the chat, you could just provide your name, title, the organization you're with, and how you're involved in dual credit. Would love to hear the different stakeholders that we have on this session today. And just some logistical items, again, please mute your computers and or your phones logged into the audio here during the presentations. We are going to have time for Q&A after each presentation, and all of us will be monitoring the chat and responding throughout during the presentations as well. But if there's kind of one or two big questions bubbling up between each presentation, we'll take some time to address those in between. And again, as mentioned right before this, just please use that chat, provide comments, questions, resources. If something sparks your thinking, if you read a cool article once, if there's a resource of how you're implementing a piece of dual credit or a story you want to tell about your community, we'd really love to hear that. So please put that in the chat throughout this presentation here today. Awesome, I see our chat blowing up here. Love it, love to see all the different people who are in the room. Hi, everyone. We've got 86 people on today, I love it. Just going to start us out with some really quick context setting, dual credit in Illinois. And so you're going to hear, and we're going to dive into different pieces of this, but a major piece of legislation here in our state is the Dual Credit Quality Act, whose purposes include expanding dual credit in order to reduce college costs, speed time to completion, facilitate the transition between high school and college, and offer opportunities for improving degree attainment for underserved populations. Through our presentations today, we're going to dive into all these different pieces, but the Dual Credit Quality Act has really made a lot of the progress possible for the work that we've done here in the state. And so we'll talk through that. And also, I'm going to link the presentation here in just a moment so you all have it, but Stanford Children also put together a summary of the Dual Credit Quality Act that dives into a little bit more detail. There may be those of you on the line who have read the full legislation. We welcome you to do that. That's linked in this presentation as well. But the summary provides some great guidance for you all. And so with that, we've expanded dual credit, we've increased the types of courses that are offered, communities are doing more and more dual credit. But the reason we're here today and the reason we'll continue to really focus deeply on this space is that access to dual credit differs depending on the population of students that we're talking about. So if we're looking at low-income students in Illinois who make up 43% of the total student population, 28% of them are currently accessing dual credit. And we see that as well for our Black and Latinx students as well. So Hispanic students making up about 26% of our total student population, only 16% taking dual credit, and the same thing for our Black students. 16% of the total student population, 9% of them are taking dual credit. So while access to dual credit has increased, there is still work to be done to focus intentionally on making sure that underrepresented populations are accessing dual credit at the level that they're represented within our state. And all this data too, encourage you all to take a look at the Illinois report card. It's all pulled from the report card there to take a look at who's accessing dual credit. You can look within your own communities or a statewide snapshot. Highly encouraged to do that. I know Dr. Durham earlier on the plenary talked about the need for disaggregated data, and that will continue to be a focus of work here. With that said, I'm going to really turn it here to our presenters to dive into the different components of dual credit and policy and what our current landscape is and what our recommendations are to move forward. And so we're going to start here with Sarah, who's a representative out of College of Lake County, but is also the president-elect for ILLICEP, which is the Illinois Alliance of Concurrent Enrollment Partnerships. So Sarah, I will turn it to you.
Thanks so much, Heather, and good afternoon, everyone. It's so great to be here with you and be able to share a little bit about the ILLICEP report on dual credit. The ILLICEP report really initiated with Unlocking Potential, which is a national report you can see in the upper left-hand corner of the slide here. It was published by the College and High School Alliance and Level Up in 2019, and it contains policy recommendations to close equity gaps and promote quality in dual credit. So to address really some of the data that Heather was just sharing with you and trying to close those gaps. The report is divided into 6 components, and those are equity goals and public reporting, program integrity and credit transfer, finance, course access and availability, instructor capacity, and finally, navigational supports. And after this was published, ILLICEP was offered a grant to conduct a gap analysis of where really Illinois falls in each of these recommended areas. So right at the beginning of the pandemic last year, we pulled together a diverse group of stakeholders from across the state to really start looking at each of these areas, see where we currently are in Illinois, and make some recommendations for moving forward. And so that's the report you see in the bottom right. We do have hard copies, so if anyone would like, we're more than happy to mail those out to you. But in the next few slides, I'm going to be going through each of the areas, the call to action from the initial Unlocking Potential report, and then where Illinois stands and the recommendations made through the report for moving forward and really working to close those opportunity gaps. So the first area, again, is having an equity goal and public reporting. And you can see here the call to action from the national report is that states set an equitable statewide public goal for increasing the participation and success of traditionally underserved student groups in college and high school programs with clear disaggregated public reporting and accountability for progress toward the goal. So as far as where we fall in Illinois, the Dual Credit Quality Act that Heather mentioned earlier does imply this kind of in the introduction of the act, but there aren't any specific targets. So that's one area that could be addressed. It is very explicit in the Perkins 5 state plan. And then like this conference, 60 by 25, we as a state do have an attainment goal, but there are opportunities to add some more specific equity targets within that goal. And then ISB and ICCB, the Illinois State Board of Education and Illinois Community College Board, do report disaggregated data, but another recommendation is for ICCB to include low income status in the disaggregated data that they report. Did just want to make a note of a couple other legislative items in this topic where Illinois, this isn't necessarily included in the report, but we do have legislation that states schools can't limit the amount of dual credit or dual enrollment courses a student takes. We also do have legislation around access and availability of online dual credit classes for high school students, and a requirement that high schools notify all juniors and seniors within their district of available dual credit. Moving on to the second area, which is program integrity and credit transfer. The call to action in the national report is that states support and promote high quality college and high school programs through effective oversight and cross-sector collaboration between the K-12 and post-secondary sectors, as well as ensuring credit articulation. So for this, we do have collaborative measures in the state for ensuring course integrity and equivalency with the college level courses. This is reflected by the Illinois Community College Board, the Illinois Board of Higher Education, the Dual Credit Quality Act, the Model Partnership Agreement, which Heather will go into a little bit more later in the presentation. But this is something that is stated very explicitly across the state. As far as transferability, there are also expectations in Illinois that dual credit courses are transfer courses or CTE courses. And the Illinois Articulation Initiative really does outline how courses transfer and requirements for course transferability. And then the iTransfer website also helps kind of show a student or parent or high school how courses would transfer. So the recommendations in this area are really around better training and communication about the items that we already have in place, as well as looking more at pathway alignment and intentional dual credit offerings and student enrollment. For finance, the national report asks states to design funding mechanisms that remove financial barriers for low income and moderate income students to participate and excel in college level work in high school. So for this area, the Model Partnership Agreement does recommend some fee structures, but this is an area where there are a lot of gaps that we could try to fill as a state, including really providing some statewide guidance and consistency for costs, for waiver processes, and for reporting costs. There are also opportunities for funding and ways to creatively try to offset costs for students and families. And then this is an area where some additional training could be provided, especially around the Model Partnership Agreement and the fee structure that's outlined there. For course access and availability, the national recommendation is that states ensure that students are able to access college and high school courses, regardless of geography, with pathways that maximize opportunities for students to earn multiple credits and facilitate students exploring academic and career areas of interest while ensuring that those courses count toward high school graduation requirements. So again, I talked about this a little bit earlier, but high schools are required to notify juniors and seniors of any dual credit opportunities. However, one of the recommendations in the report is that this be extended to younger grades, potentially as early as middle school. And then eligibility for dual credit is outlined through the Dual Credit Quality Act and is included in the Model Partnership Agreement as well. So recommendations here are really around enhanced training for these various areas, better reporting, better communication, and then just ensuring that students have multiple measures that can be used to demonstrate eligibility. For instructor capacity, the call to action is that states develop strategies to recruit, support, and diversify the pool of instructors with the qualifications to teach college and high school, while encouraging collaboration between K-12 and post-secondary partners as college and high school programs are scaled. So in this area, Illinois does have very clear instructor qualifications. The Illinois Board of Higher Education has a state directory of graduate programs where high school teachers can take coursework to meet the required qualifications. We also have the new dual credit endorsement, which high school teachers can get. And we have the time-limited professional development plan where high school teachers can start teaching dual credit while they're earning the final graduate credits required to be fully qualified. So the recommendation here is really around collaboration and having high schools, universities, state agencies, and community colleges really work together to find creative opportunities to increase the number of teachers with the required credentials to teach dual credit. And then the last area of the report is navigational supports. So the call to action is that states prioritize the student navigational supports and advising needed to ensure student success in college and high school courses, particularly for those students historically underserved by these programs. And in Illinois, navigational supports are mentioned in both the Post-Secondary and Workforce Readiness Act and the Model Partnership Agreement. But I think there are a lot of opportunities here in terms of providing funding for and really developing tools and resources that can be used with students and families as navigational supports. And then kind of aligned to that, also increasing communication about the tools and resources about dual credit generally, and providing professional development on dual credit and navigational supports. So that wraps up at a very high level an overview of the dual credit report that ILLICEP put together. Again, if you'd like hard copies of the report, we have them available. I'm just checking the chat to see if there are any questions that I should address now before handing it over to Aimee. So I will now then hand it over to Aimee Galvin with Stanford Children, and she is going to talk through Stanford Children's report, which really in a lot of ways gives snapshots of recommendation and promising practices in action related to a lot of the things that we found in the ILLICEP report.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Aimee Galvin. I am the Policy and Government Affairs Manager for Stanford Children. In case you haven't heard of us, Stanford Children Illinois is a statewide nonprofit dedicated to ensuring that all students have access to a high quality education, of which dual credit is an integral part of that mission. So, like ILLICEP, we also released a report on dual credit report last year. And as Sarah has said, many of the themes that she just walked through are echoed in our report. So I'm not going to go through kind of our state policy recommendations, but I will provide a quick legislative update so you can see how some of those policy recommendations are being used to inform legislation. And then I'll walk through some of our district-based best practices that was also covered in our report. To begin with, so as many of you are aware, the Black Caucus championed for and passed an equity-centered education bill, HB 2170, during the most recent lame duck session. That bill was jam-packed with policies intended to advance racial equity, and we were really thrilled to see two particular policies related to dual credit. One is academic acceleration, and the other is course equity. First, let's talk a little bit about academic acceleration. So the policy is based on a Washington state law that tripled the percentage of Black high school students enrolled in advanced courses. Obviously, we'd love to see that replicated in Illinois. And this bill would require schools to automatically enroll students who meet or exceed standards into the next most rigorous course. And so that could be an AP or an IB course, but it could also be a dual credit course. And it could also put students on a sequence that would then lead to dual credit courses. Students who are automatically enrolled can choose to opt out. So we are respecting students' academic goals, so they don't have to take that course. And it doesn't remove any existing pathways for enrollment. So this is a floor, not a ceiling. But it does, what it does effectively is it removes any element of implicit bias in eligibility measures. And it really opens the door for more students to eventually have access to these courses that give them early college credit. The other piece of HB 2170 is related to dual credit is the course equity provision, which requires all students to have access to courses required for admission at Illinois colleges. Schools will be able to offer these courses on site or partner with neighboring districts, community college, or other course providers. So there's a lot of opportunity there to make those required courses dual credit courses. So we'll see how that kind of plays out. Looking ahead to the upcoming session, there have been three bills introduced thus far that are related to dual credit, and I'll go over these quickly because these bills are really early in the process, so there's a lot of potential for change in these. HB 1884 would allow teachers without master's degrees in rural schools to qualify for professional development plans and then teach dual credit. And we'll talk more about these PDPs throughout, and Sarah kind of referenced them. But just really quickly, the Dual Credit Quality Act introduced an interim qualified instructors category, which would allow teachers who are traditionally do not qualify for dual credit to then teach dual credit if they're participating in a 4-year professional development plan, which is created in from the high school and the higher learning partner. So this bill would make some changes to that. HB 2827 would allow MAP grants to be used for dual credit. And this is obviously to help reduce the financial burden of dual credit courses from families. HB 3644 would allow partnership agreements to permit students who do not meet the community college's eligibility standards to enroll in the course for high school credit. So this would be important for rural districts that may not have the ability to offer 2 sections of a course, so that they could effectively combine that course, have a dual credit offering, but then have some students who are just taking it for high school credit. So as you can see, the legislative focus is on bills that either improve access or provides more flexibilities to districts to get dual credit programs up and running, during a time of, as you guys know, like a very acute teacher shortages, extremely strapped budgets, and COVID, of course. So, really trying to make that flexibility so that these programs can continue. The House deadline to introduce bills was last week, but the Senate deadline is this week. So there still could be some more bills. And as I said, there could be a lot of churn with those bills that I just presented. So stay tuned. But the highlight is there's a real appetite at the state level to expand dual credit programs. State policy can only take us so far in developing strong dual credit programming for students up and down the state. The real magic happens back home in your districts. So I wanted to spend the rest of my time reviewing the district-based best practices that were included in our report, Expanding Equity in Dual Credit. So this report was the final product of our 2020 Policy Fellowship, which brought together key dual credit stakeholders from across the state to spend 6 months talking all things dual credit. Together, we had teachers, superintendents, program administrators, parents, dual credit students, all kind of together in a virtual setting to review the current Illinois dual credit landscape, evaluate programs and policies from other states, dig through the latest research, and share successful practices from their own districts. So the practices you're about to see are designed to maximize equitable enrollment and set students and schools up for success. Many of the schools you'll see highlighted are members of the 60 by 25 network. So if you see an idea that resonates with you, I highly encourage you to reach out to some of these pioneering districts. A lot of folks are here today. So network. So let's dive in. First up is Vienna. Across Illinois, 44% of community college students have to enroll in at least one remedial course. And we all know that these courses can be expensive and can really bog students down, and so that they don't finish their degree. Vienna, however, has just 3% of students requiring remediation. So they're really bucking this trend. The key to their success is to embed dual credit in their regular school life. Similar to HB 2170's academic acceleration and course equity provisions, all roads lead to some college credit in Vienna. They do this first by offering school-wide placement testing, which removes barriers to access such as scheduling or transportation, or simply just knowing that the test is required for dual credit courses. And it also, by providing that on-site testing, it's convenient for students, it's accessible, and it establishes a school culture that values dual credit, college credit. Second, Vienna embeds dual credit or transitional courses into all course sequences, ensuring that each and every student graduates college ready. Embedding these dual credit courses into course sequences expands opportunities for all, and the research, as you'll hear throughout the session, really supports this approach. Go to the next one. Further north, Pontiac Township High School is working hand in hand with Heartland Community College to embed dual credit into its agricultural pathway to provide clear stepping stones from high school to college. So if a high school course requires a prerequisite, communicating that to students really early in their high school career as they map out their course schedules is important to increase access and avoid surprises during senior year. In Pontiac, students can meet the prerequisites for high school and college courses by completing coursework in the pathway or traveling to the community college to take a placement test. This helps students see how course A connects to course B, which connects to course C, and then helps them see a clear path from secondary to post-secondary. To facilitate these seamless pathways, however, for students, Pontiac recommends developing a process for communication among partners. Pontiac and Heartland use semi-annual check-ins to conduct program reviews and discuss innovative ideas rooted in practice. To really develop articulated, highly integrated course pathways, you have to work hand in hand with your partners. And again, that's a theme I think you'll see over and over as we move through the session today. Even further north, Rockford reminds us that research and practice tells us that students who may not meet certain proficiency benchmarks can still be successful in dual credit courses. So it's vital to meet students where they are to expand access. So rather than requiring students to meet a certain benchmark to be eligible for a dual credit course, Rockford provides synchronous targeted supports to help students reach proficiency in key subject areas while still working towards dual credit. And like Pontiac, Rockford offers dual credit CTE courses that not only offer students a chance at college credit while in high school, but help solidify that link between academics and careers. And once again, puts students on that pathway so they can move to and through high school, or to and through both high school and college. And I'll go to the next one. So Rodrigo will be giving a much more robust update on Elgin's best practices as he walks through the MPA. So I'll just briefly call out the two best practices that we use from them in our report. The first is adopting multiple eligibility measures, which is a theme I'm hoping you're starting to hear again throughout the session. That this approach is backed by so much research that consistently proves that most students can benefit from dual credit course. And so districts should be casting a really wide net to enroll as many students as possible in these courses rather than weeding students out. And then Elgin also recommends, similar to Pontiac, recommends forming an advisory council to collaborate with institutions and districts, not just within, but also outside of your providing partners, so that you could share best practices, discuss barriers, and pool resources. But again, like you'll hear most of this from Rodrigo later on, so we'll move on. The last best practice reminds us to think outside of the box. So for many good reasons, community colleges are the primary partners for high schools in seeking to offer dual credit. But four-year colleges and universities are standing up to serve students. And one of those is Eastern Illinois University, which offers two models of dual credit delivery. One is online, which is even more important in today's remote learning settings. And then the other is at the high school campus, which provides students with unique dual credit courses and a chance to see themselves as college students. Again, the research tells us that dual credit courses can be a real confidence booster for students who may not think themselves as college material, but you get them in this course. There was a great article in the Times about a Harvard dual credit course. I'll throw it in the chat, about basically connecting with these students, getting them in the course, and it gives them the confidence that they can do this, that they can keep going. And then again, that goes hand in hand with some of the offering supports that Rockford does. The next is teacher credentialing. I mean, you guys know teacher credentialing is a significant and growing obstacle, but the new provision we've talked about in the Dual Credit Quality Act allows high schools and higher learning partners to provide four-year professional development plans to teachers who want to earn graduate credits. They need to be fully qualified. Leveraging this opportunity can be a win-win-win because we'll get more students, more dual credit students in classrooms. You get higher quality professional development for teachers, and then you get more graduate students enrolled in college. So this is just something that we should really be embracing as a state. And like I said, it's a new provision, so we're doing a lot to try to get the word out for that. So I think we can go to the last one. I went through those really fast. Hopefully you saw some ideas that you can take back to your district. But the main themes are really simple, and they kind of carry through all of these examples. The first is expand access, expand access for students when by embedding those courses into existing curriculums and pathways. 2, meet students where they are, whether that's physically by offering on-site testing or academically by using multiple measures to determine eligibility, and then offering synchronous supports to help get students up to speed. And then 3 is develop communication channels and partnership agreements that allow you to work hand in hand with your partners to create seamless course sequences that allow students to see a pathway to and through college. There's our website. You can download all of these best practices. We've got them in quick little PDFs, but you can also dig more. We've got larger stories about all of these districts on dualcreditequity.org. That's our place for our whole report. There's a little navigator you can jump around. And thanks again to all these districts that participated in the fellowship, and sharing all their wisdom with us. So that's it for my point. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Amy, and thank you, Sarah. We're going to be switching over screens here in a moment. We are going to start to dive into something you've heard mentioned a few times here, the Model Partnership Agreement. And again, I hope you have heard some of those consistent themes coming through from Sarah and Amy as we continue to think about how we continue to broaden access and ensure that it's equitable access, and more students from underrepresented populations are accessing dual credit in a quality way. So I'm going to turn to Rodrigo to introduce themselves here, and then I'm also realizing that I might have never introduced myself. I sometimes hop on these lines and just start going, but Rodrigo, and then I'll chat briefly about the MPA before we move on.
Thank you, Heather. My name is Rodrigo Lopez. I'm the Assistant Dean of College and High School Programs at Elgin Community College, and also the current president of the Illinois chapter of NASEP.
Wonderful. And so I think if we go one slide back here, Rodrigo is going to really dive into this. I'm just going to provide some really initial context here about what the MPA is, what the Model Partnership Agreement is. We get a lot of different questions about it. I'm a policy and program manager with Education Systems Center out of Northern Illinois University, and we help facilitate the committee of representatives who help develop the Model Partnership Agreement. And just providing an overview here, thinking about the different pieces you've heard from Sarah and Amy. All 48 community colleges in our state offer dual credit, but the type of dual credit, the quantity, the amount of dual credit varies among partnerships. And so there's a lack of consistency there too. And so the Model Partnership Agreement, as a part of the Dual Credit Quality Act, was to really develop that recommended practice for partnerships across the state to look to when they might want to enhance or adjust or maybe even completely adopt the MPA. So part of this too, a key provision in that Dual Credit Quality Act required that if a community college district, upon the request of a school district within its jurisdiction, to enter into a partnership agreement with the district to offer dual credit coursework. So, the MPA is developed as a recommended model of practice. It does not need to be implemented in whole, but it may be if a time period goes by and the community college and their districts can't come together to kind of sort out their areas of disagreement. But otherwise, you can look at the different pieces of the MPA and implement it into your partnership. And that's what Rodrigo is really going to talk us through here today, how Elgin Community College and their district partners took the MPA, they looked at their partnership, and they thought, where can we make some enhancements and adjustments? And again, it's really intended here to serve that role of structuring the parameters of local collaboration. At the end of the day, and you heard Sarah and Amy talk about it quite a bit, it's about that collaboration. It's about that partnership between school districts and community colleges. Amy even brought out some examples of a four-year university to really come together and build those relationships and that collaboration to deliver dual credit that's scalable and ensures access to quality dual credit courses. And there's really three key themes of the MPA. One of them is engaging leadership and establishing clear roles. Rodrigo's really going to talk you through some of these pieces, but part of the MPA establishes liaisons. So folks who help coordinate the dual credit delivery, they help coordinate the different components needed to get that course up and running and to get the collaboration going between school and community college. And there's also an annual review process. So each year, again, this is all about local collaboration. How is that partnership looking at how everything went within their dual credit courses for the year? How are they looking at data? How are they thinking about the next year as they move forward in this? It also creates that collaborative process for what can be really thorny issues. And you've heard about this a bit here already. Instructor approval and making sure that instructors are qualified to deliver dual credit. It outlines a process for that. It also outlines a process for course documentation. So before the course even starts, talking through what are the pieces that are needed to make sure that this course is going to meet the quality components of a college level course. And so talking through the different pieces and supports on both the college faculty and the school district side for delivering that dual credit course. And ultimately what this helps do is to place students at the center of dual credit. As you heard again from Amy and Sarah, dual credit can be a game changer for students. And there's so many different ways to make sure that we are expanding access and supports so that more students and a diverse set of students are accessing dual credit. We'll talk through, again, evidence-based and multiple measure placement requirements. But excited here now to really just turn it over to Rodrigo to talk you through how the MPA has affected their work at Elgin Community College and their dual credit partnerships.
Thank you, Heather. I think the first few things that I'd like to say is to Heather's point at the beginning of the presentation, this is really intended to be a shared learning experience. Obviously, you'll hear a lot about kind of what we did as we anticipated the MPA's release, as we were working through other logistics and structuring in our college. But most importantly, I think also is that I would like to say that we're still figuring things out, as many of you are. And I know that I see a lot of colleagues from across the state that we've had conversations with and have had similar experiences. So I look forward to learning from you as you hear me talk about our experiences. And lastly, I'd like to go ahead and just kind of give a quick shout out to our core team, Dr. Mary Perkins, Ms. Allison Douglas, Ms. Jeannie Wallach, and Ms. Martha Del Real. We work very, very hard to make sure that at the core of our work is equity for students and ensuring that we are being practical and also student-centered. So without further ado, I think I want to go ahead and just say a few things. So Elgin Community College, located northwest suburbs of Chicago. We serve 4 school districts, including the 6th and 2nd largest school districts of Illinois. Our dual credit programming has increased in terms of participation. Just a few years ago, we were only serving about 200 to 300 students at the ECC campus, but recently are nearing 1,000 students in the high school buildings, which is inclusive of 11 public school buildings and potentially 2 additional private institutions. When the MPA was released, one of the first things that we did was we collaborated through the Alliance. So we have an Alliance for College and Career Student Success and brought in our school partners together. And this is that piece that Heather just mentioned, that we were very specific about who these liaisons, the dual credit liaison at the district level were versus the college and the institution. And sometimes that role has been shared depending on what the work entails. But we wanted to go ahead and make sure that with the MPA, that we were kind of reflecting on our current local agreement and using the MPA for the catalyst to make these improvements that we all believed on needed to be made. So one of the other things that I'll mention before I move on is that, and you'll see me click through some of these resources, is that I'm sharing resources with you all. Some of them are just templates, some of them are kind of just documents and maybe a little too specific to ECC, but in general, I hope that they're helpful for you if you're looking for something to reference or something for you to go ahead and get started with. And that link that you see on the screen will take you to a Google folder where those resources are located. Okay, so I'm actually going to go ahead and do a couple of things. I'm going to get out of the presenting mode and I'm going to go ahead and share my full screen. The MPA, for those of you who may be looking for it, is actually you can find it relatively easy on ICCP's website, and that's the link up there. If you scroll to the bottom, you'll see a few other resources, but one of them is the actual MPA. And so when you click on the MPA, it'll take you to the document. And so this is what the document looks like. And so it's 17 pages. It's broken up into different exhibits. And what I did in terms of trying to figure out what was the best way to walk through some of the things that we've accomplished in the last couple of years is I broke up my presentation by referencing the exhibits. So in the MPA, one of the exhibits here is Exhibit B. Exhibit A provides a lot of background and or definitions, but Exhibit B really kind of gets to, starts to get to the core of the recommendations the partner should be looking to adopt. In the case of course availability, teacher, and course approval, I'm going to talk about 3 things. One of them being our course request process for both new classes and renewal courses, but also taking into account how we've incorporated the high school instructor review process as part of that. We also are I also kind of talk a little bit about what we did in terms of setting up differentiation between priority and non-priority classes, as you see in the MPA. That is something that is noted on there, and there is very specific language as to what would make one course priority or non-priority. So let me go ahead and get started by saying that in the as we were trying to think through how to further expand and kind of get organized with recruiting and doing our outreach to potential teachers who met qualifications to teach dual credit classes, we recognized that one of the first things we needed to make sure that we understood is both at ECC and at the school districts that we had a very specific timeline process in place that met the needs of both the school districts and the college at the same time. So we created this document that I'll kind of show you real quick here. And the document is a chronological timeline. Oop, not that one, excuse me. This one right here. It's a chronological timeline of the things that have to be accomplished either by the school districts or the college as we are looking to, and this could be used for the as the initiation of a partnership, but also as an expansion of the course offerings. So, and I'll make it a little bigger for everyone to be able to go and see. Right up, oops, I'm going to take this away here because I can't see. All right, I hope you can see that better. So again, this is what we call the, the details of steps on how to go about requesting or how we go about offering dual credit courses at the high school building. A couple of the notes that I'll make now is, and I would be remiss if I didn't say so, is that as we were looking and analyzing it, understanding the MPA, one of the things that we also took into account very purposefully and intentionally is NASEP standards. We rely heavily on that. That is something that we believe in is going to help overall not only bring access and to more students, but also ensure the quality and rigor of our programming. So you see a note up here in orange that says NASEP standard P1 and P2. P1 and P2 is in reference to those particular partnership standards, 1 and 2. And so throughout the document, you'll see a reference to that, where for us, it's kind of an indication to kind of let us all know that this is a step in the process that fulfills that particular requirement. So I'll just kind of go through it real quick. As you can see, our process that we've kind of come to agreement on starts about 18 months in advance. So actually here coming up soon, next week, we're going to get going with conversations about dual credit course offerings for academic year 22-23. And there's tasks and responsibilities on both ends, so both either directly through my office or our academic deans or VP, as well as a school district official or high school building officials. One of the other pieces of documents that I wanted to share with you at this time, which is related to this, and I'm going to get out of this real quick and go back here, is this document here that talks about exactly what is it that we're looking for and how to best help instructors and really anyone who is working, who is a dual credit practitioner, understand the requirements and process to becoming an eligible dual credit instructor. So we figured that as we were meeting with school districts, some of them had had a lot of kind of background and knowledge about where some of their instructors' credentials, what some of their instructor credentials could bring to them in terms of opportunities for dual credit, while others were just getting started. And for us, it had been some time that we had not offered dual credit in the school building. So we also felt that this was important for us to go ahead and document. So this is again our guidelines document that you will find in the shared drive, which basically again just outlines exactly what are the requirements for a high school instructor to be credentialed or approved to teach dual credit classes at the school building, whether that be classes in the general education core curriculum or courses in CTE. We also talk about specifically on how that particular instructor, after approval and having completed 1 year of teaching or 1 academic year of teaching, would go about remaining eligible to continue to do so in following years. And that's what speaks to the ongoing professional development requirements. Inclusive in that, and you kind of hear me talk about these couple of things soon, are the site visit requirements, but also other work that we believe that we've integrated into this process to allow for further dialogue and engagement between the high school instructors at the high school and the faculty at the college. Lastly, I'll show you, again, a lot of show and tell here. So I'll show you a document. It's a template, a spreadsheet template that we use to start documenting our priority versus non-priority courses. And so in the MPA, the priority, non-priority courses are defined as such. And it's a little small here, so I'll try to make it bigger. The classes you see on here is basically the majority of our courses that our dual credit students have completed over the last 5-6 years. So for those of you who may not know, we have a very large enrollment of students at the college campus. They come to us both on a part-time and full-time basis. So taking that as kind of the inventory, we went through and documented the PCS codes, the II codes, and make sure that we noted whether or not it was a general education core curriculum course or general education elective course, because that was very particular and specific and necessary for us to keep track of as part of our addendum to the local agreement, which essentially is the MPA. I'm seeing a lot of traffic to the chat, so I don't know if you want me to stop here, Heather, and answer some questions before we move on.
I think a lot of it is resourcing and linking to pieces you're doing, Rodrigo. I know I've been chatting in there, but I think there was just a question about just really speaking to, you know, how much of the MPA you launched from, incorporated. I think there was a question, was it like 50-50 or what does that look like?
That's a great question. So I actually put a copy of both our original and still standing MOU in the folder, but I also included our addendum, which is the incorporation of the MPA. We essentially, I would say about 75% of the MPA is what we took in as our local agreement, and as this MPA comes to its end term, we do intend to continue to revise it to look at other pieces that we at that time may have kind of passed on simply due to just, you know, resources or understanding or just kind of needing to clarify our goals. And so as you can see, I showed you kind of my screen showing the actual MPA. And so as I'm scrolling through ECC's adopted version, it is pretty much similar to that. And so again, yeah, our intent, I think, is to continue to rely on these types of resources. So, again, everything with equity and trying to figure out what pieces may bring greater access to some of our most underrepresented students in the community college district. Okay, so moving on, I think kind of keeping with the Exhibit B. So Exhibit B also talks about dual credit faculty liaisons, the training of new high school instructors, and the professional development offered to high school instructors as well. One piece kind of integrated into these two is the observational review of course delivery, which we have used to we termed it as the site visit. So I know when we got started, this is definitely one of the parts that it took us a lot of time to kind of configure and figure out exactly more or less what is it that we need to get out of it, not only from a procedural standpoint, but also from a partnership internally and externally. And so I think, again, our faculty have been great in this process. I think that we owe a lot of to their leadership and expertise to ensure that, as you just heard me talk about this, as much as we want to get more students into dual credit, we have to continue to reference exactly what we need to do to make sure that students are coming in there ready, qualified, but ultimately going to be successful and walk away with that dual credit. So one of the documents that I'll show you on this screen is it's a Word doc, and it's our job description of the dual credit faculty liaison. So I know that we were out there searching for some examples. We did get some pretty good ones from other institutions, so I know there's other ones out there. So if it's helpful for you, please by all means reference it, take from it what you think is helpful for you. But not only does it talk about kind of more or less, it's obviously kind of it lays out what the dual credit faculty position entails, the responsibilities, as you'll see in the second page, but also we've included the costs or the pay that we were able to negotiate internally for these positions. So again, a lot of other information here that I think you'll find useful, but I know again that I specifically highlighted this one to share with you all because it is something that I know a lot of institutions have been working to go ahead and create on their end. I think moving on to the faculty, the dual credit faculty liaison role, but also the requirement of these site visits as it is stated in the Dual Credit Quality Act and also referenced and noted in the MPA. I'm providing you with our document that we drew up to go ahead and communicate exactly what this entailed. Again, I think we felt that best practice was to make sure that we were constantly thinking about how to best communicate and clarify or bring greater awareness to all the different components about the operations of dual credit. Again, this is kind of what I do on a day in, day out. Dr. Perkins, my dean, also does that. So for us, it's probably we make probably a lot of assumptions, and we don't want to take anything for granted. But it also kind of holds us accountable too, to make sure that we're being reflective on our work and see what needs tweaking, what needs improvement, or where we run into some challenges that we might be able to look back to these parts for improvement. So again, this kind of talks about the process for the site visits. We have a pre-conference, we have the site visits, then we have a post-conference. And then also talks about some of the documentations that are, I guess, procured from this process, not only for the kind of verification of the site visit having been completed successfully, but also, and some of the things you may be able to find in the folder is the site visit component is very much a part of NACEP accreditation, and there's standards, and there's, if you look at those resources, there is some evidence of, what is it, how can you go about making sure that you're tracking and using these experiences to build off making your performance better. So again, you'll find a lot of references in our work to where either a particular NACEP standard comes into play, or the Dual Credit Quality Act, or the MPA is noted. And I think the last thing I had on this real quick was, and this is really more kind of logistical, but I figure maybe this is something for people to kind of take note of. We are actually in the process of procuring an online web-based system. Many of you who work in dual credit may be familiar with online web systems that allow you to manage and keep your dual credit program running. And it's really a great way to go and share more information or more of those processes and logistics between the school districts and the college, knowing that our systems don't connect. But in the meantime, we created this kind of spreadsheet to keep track of our dual credit instructors, not only as they were making their way through the approval process and the documentation and onboarding, but also keeping track of courses. And so this is the first tab that kind of highlights the different pieces of information and steps that we keep track of on an annual basis. But also there's pieces, there's a second tab here, and I'm wondering if I can kind of click over to it. It won't let me, but the second tab essentially is more specific to the semester. So let me see if I can open this up real quick here, because I do want to show you what we do on a specific, on a semester to semester basis. So give me just a second here. I'm trying to get this little box out of my way. Okay. For some reason, it's not showing up, but I will make sure that it's in there. So what you could expect to see in that second tab, it was more specific to the instructor training, both the orientation process, the discipline-specific training, a lot of tracking of, making sure the syllabus is submitted, is reviewed, is approved, textbook information, if that is relative and relevant to us keeping track of it, and as well as the completion of professional development if the instructor is going from year 1 to year 2, or between years after they've taught with us for the first time. A couple of my points. I think this is, I wanted to go ahead and also kind of highlight some of the recent work that we've been doing with our school districts and EFE, as you see here, and I'll try and make this a little bigger for everyone to see. This is actually a copy of our regional district map. We've been working very closely with Ed Systems in incorporating the model programs of study. And so this is just an example of one of our regional maps highlighting the business of financial services. For those of you who may be familiar with this work, ultimately what we're looking to do is re-emphasize the high value strategic use of dual credit or early college credit courses that are online, specifically to a pathway or more directly to various programs of study that lead to high paying, high impact occupations. So this is important for me, obviously for the work that we do, but as it relates to the MPA, in the beginning, there's a reference to selection and choosing of dual credit courses. And so I think what we've known to be true is that we're all moving closer and closer to ensuring that the classes that we're offering for dual credit at the high school are bringing students this level of impact and value. And so again, just a quick reference, I think this is just our way to make sure that the work that we're doing in and out of the day-to-day work operations of dual credit is connected back to the larger colleges' goals and purposes, but also the school districts and as you can see, our region with the help and guidance of our AFE. So I'm going to go back here. This is again just kind of a reference. This is another the regional map that you just looked at, which is also kind of, there's a snippet here on here. I think I just wanted to kind of make another point that the components of that pathway are aligned to the obviously requirements of the College and Career Pathway Endorsement Framework. So once again, very important to kind of keep these things aligned together at all times. And just a couple other points of reference here. So ECC for adopted almost literally just like other parts, but this was kind of a literal just copy paste of the MPA, the cost and fee structure. So Exhibit C, we conducted a program cost analysis, and the purpose of that, we had great representation. The college was represented on the MPA Task 14 that obviously brought to us the MPA at the state level. But for us internally, we wanted to go ahead and ensure that we had that we understood and we were conscious of the costs, expenses, but also revenue that was coming in, given our current funding structure used for dual credit. So what you will find in the share drive is just an example template of some of the things that we took into consideration. Feel free to input your own, quantities and formulas to keep track of your expenses. But we went through and figured out exactly that. And this is where I would say that, as you all know, we rely heavily on our colleagues across the institution, colleges, and also the school district do the same to make sure that the program is running smoothly. So taking all of that work into consideration allowed us to make sure that as we were moving forward to figure out what modifications needed to be done to this piece, that we had something to reference. And so in the MPA, there's a couple of different cost structures that are recommended. And so we adopted those for schools, for type A courses, which are courses that are offered in the high school building. A priority course is charged at 8% of tuition fees, and a non-priority course is charged at 12%. But as you heard me say, for students who are taking classes at the college, a priority course is charged at 70% versus 75% for those non-priority courses. And so that to us was actually one of the biggest, I think, improvement achievements that we made, because we currently have about 400 to 450 students who are enrolled at the college campus. And so that's a huge savings for the school districts. Our school districts do pay tuition fees on behalf of their students. Some of them might have some implemented fees to be able to participate internally or to maintain, the program on their end. But with that being said, in terms of billing discounts and really tuition waivers, is that there is a component in the MPA that talks about community college or the colleges approving and giving tuition waivers to students who and doesn't really specify, but what we use as the metric was our participating in the free or reduced lunch program at the school district. So in this case, if there's a dual credit student who is participating in this free and reduced lunch program, then there is no cost charge for that student's participation in dual credit. The last thing I'll say about this, though, is I know there's a lot of conversation about this, not only in the state level and I think nationally, is that we look forward to continue to learn about how to make dual credit more accessible and limiting, reducing costs to institutions or to the partnership as a whole. And lastly, Exhibit D talks about student procedures, supports, data, and the review process that we should all be doing at the end of each academic school year or school year. Some of the things that we want to highlight with this is that, and this is something that I think I feel pretty proud of what we do. I mean, the school districts do a phenomenal job of supporting our students on the campus and at the college campus and at the high school building. But for those of you who may have heard me talk about dual credit recently, one of the things that we know we had a gap, and we wanted to figure out better ways to support counselors in the advising of dual credit. The institution, the college, created a dual credit academic advisor, and that individual just started in the position about a month ago. So we're still trying to figure out how to onboard the individual and kind of how that person is going to more or less interconnect with our resources and kind of processes. But ultimately here, the emphasis is that we believe that, there's unique experiences and talent and knowledge the academic advisors have in higher ed, but also the role and the knowledge of school counselors on the high school. So connecting those two things, what we hope is that students, as they're learning about pathways, majors, program of studies, institutions, that more emphasis is given to making sure the students are making the right choices at that time that are going to give them that credit and really advance them or accelerate their learning, but also kind of get them ahead, right? The intent here is not just to accelerate their learning, but also to ensure that they're actually moving further ahead in their progression to attaining this post-secondary credential. You heard me talk about the online web management system. And so I think that's just really more of a point that we feel that more data and keeping kind of data that is shared and that is easily accessible for all of us is important, which ultimately all of this comes back to the Dual Credit Advisory Council. We started the Advisory Council about 2 years ago. We're still refining it. We're still kind of identifying new goals, new objectives and tasks, but and this has been, I think for me personally, a great experience where we really make sure that we're all collaboratively owning our due diligence in helping students not only access the dual credit, but that it is meeting their individual academic plans. So I won't click on those resources there at the bottom because I think they're pretty self-explanatory, but I'll just talk about them briefly. One of them is our position description to the dual credit academic advisor. A couple documents that we detail exactly what is dual credit, how does dual credit work, the different options for dual credit, and that is the program guide. The MPA speaks to making sure that these items are very clear and accessible to parents and students. And our application guide, which is kind of more of a procedure document, but also outlines the minimum competencies and or other student eligibility requirements that students must fulfill to be eligible to participate in our dual credit student handbook. A lot of what we spend our time making sure that we're informing students about is not just their expectations and responsibilities, but some of the consequences that may come about as they're entering college for the first time and they're going to be producing that permanent college transcript. So that is all I have for you. Again, thank you so much. And I think, again, this is really an opportunity for me to just share with you what we've done up to date and that we look forward to enhancing our work by incorporating more pieces of the MPA.
Thank you, Rodrigo, and thank you again to Aimee and Sarah. We have some reflection questions here for you all, but wondering too, we have some time. So I know folks have their cameras off in pieces, but If we want to take a little bit of time to move into some breakout rooms. Hold on, I'm going to get my screen up here, but I think Rodrigo's got it. Okay, thank you. So there's 3 kind of big reflection questions here. We'll post these again in the breakout groups. But again, one of the best parts of a conference is hearing from presenters with expertise and experience who can share models and resources, but also really connecting to one another. As we mentioned earlier, we know that we had a lot of information to share, but you all have even more, and you have other questions. You have things hopefully that were brought up for you today that we would love to give you all some time to kind of digest and dive into. So I'm thinking we'll move into rooms for about 10 minutes. And then we have some quick follow-up items, and we'll likely wrap up here before 1:30, but it's always when you say that you go right until the time. So kind of soak in these questions here for a moment. I'm going to get our breakout rooms set up, and I'll post these and put them in the rooms as well. But really thinking through if there's any questions or thoughts that today's discussion brought up for you. Would really love to know in your groups if there's 2 or 3 kind of action steps that you maybe immediately or in the near future would like to take as a result of what you've heard here today. Some of them might be small steps, big steps, right? But all steps matter as you kind of go towards increasing and enhancing access and quality to dual credit. And then would love to know too, in your groups, if there's lingering pieces, other resources. I know a lot of things were shared in the chat. But if there's other resources, the different models, communities you heard about, connection points that any of the presenters here can make for you to support you in those steps, we would also love to know that. So let me get these breakout rooms going. And let's see, we've got, okay, I think if I do this, gives us like about groups of 5 or so. So I'm gonna launch our rooms and we'll come back here in about 10 minutes for some closing. Wonderful. All right. It looks like we're getting everyone back here to the main room. So we have just a couple of, follow-up items, next steps here, but would love if any groups have insights, aha moments, questions, and action step they'd like to take, would love to hear from the groups to the large room. Please feel free to unmute or post it in the chat, whatever you're most comfortable with.
All right, Heather, I'll share. I got a connection through Amy Williams. She's at the NACEP to help us potentially get a math instructor dual credit credentialed. She's having some difficulties because her master's degree is in math instruction. And we just haven't been able to iron out all those kinks, in both the community colleges and us have tried really hard. So Amy's gonna connect me, and she's in Montana, which is probably the best state there is.
2 Montanans
really
found
cool.
each other.
I love it. Sometimes the randomly assigned breakout rooms can be very small world, very connecting. Love that. Thanks, Daryl and Amy.
Yep.
And I think I'll just chime in real quick. Daryl, if you have not already connected with Jason Klein out of the P20 network and NIU, just recently relaunched the dual credit think tank, and teacher capacity and credentialing and everything that you just said essentially is kind of at the core of that work that has just been reinitiated. So Jason Klein from the P20 network.
And if I could chime in, Heather, I'm very appreciative of the small breakout room that we had, because I'm Jenny from NIU, and I connected with Kara Schultz from RVC, and we talked about the importance of the 4-year with different courses available for teacher credentialing that need to be approved and be appropriate for the different community colleges, and looking at what that might look like in the future, especially for courses that, or for content areas that are not one of the 9 endorsement areas. The 9 endorsement areas bring together some consistency, but if it's things outside of that, then there are differences in need among the community colleges. And so we're trying to navigate that. So it was a perfect little group for me. So thank you.
That's wonderful. I'm telling you, there's magic to the randomness.
It was.
Mark?
I'll just add, in our breakout, we talked a bit about computer science education. And so I'm Mark Harris from the Discovery Partners Institute, which is an initiative of the University of Illinois system. And we're particularly focused in CS education, not only in building teacher capacity. And so there's an endorsement program that we're launching that in fact is sort of tied squarely to some of the things CPS is involved with to expand their dual credit offerings, to offer the plus 18 to get the content area of computer science, so teachers can teach dual credit in CS. In fact, we're launching this summer, but also pathways for students to get more computer science experiences, since many schools don't offer that on their own. So a nice discussion we had, and happy to share more information. A few of my colleagues are on here as well that can share more if there's a CS interest.
Well, that's wonderful. I'm always glad when we have some time for breakout rooms. We've talked a lot about, the beauty. There's advantages to the virtual conference. More folks can attend and from all different areas, don't need to travel as much, but then you miss that in between chat time when you're grabbing a coffee or, mulling into the room. So glad that we had some time here in this session for you all to connect. In terms of just some, additional next steps, and there's a lot of resources linked here too throughout the presentation, as you can see, and we'll be following up with the recording, the presentation, but also have launched in partnership, with Stand, with ILSEP, with NASEP, with Partnership for College Completion, Ed Systems, lots of organizations, other education groups coming together to put out a dual credit survey, just to hear more from Illinois educators, administrators, counselors, policymakers, but also especially parents, families, students, how they're thinking about dual credit, how they're thinking about the opportunities within dual credit, and also the challenges and questions that they have. So this is very much something, it's going to be open till Friday, March 12th. We're going to be looking at this just to really think about where are those policy solutions that need to help advance this, to expand access, ensure high quality, promote college and career success. And as you heard, like Rodrigo gave you a very almost like step-by-step guide about creating those dual credit partnerships, right? Like how are we thinking through those other community models as well? So please very much, we can post the survey in the chat here too, but this is open until the 12th, and we'd love for you all to share with your networks. Again, would love to hear from students and families and get their voices in this work as well through the survey. And I know there's some survey fatigue right now in the virtual world, but to those networks, those folks that you think this would be valuable and provide input to, we would love to hear from them. And there are some additional resources here for you all linked, and also all throughout the chat. I almost feel like I need to just put together a whole document of everything that was in the chat and everything in this presentation and send it out to you all, because there was so much good stuff in there. But from all of us here who presented today, just thank you so much. I think this was a really incredible discussion. Hope it provided a lot of resources, inspiration, and insight for you all as you continue to expand and support dual credit in your communities.